Okay, so have you ever seen a poetry collection with a title as cool as Omnibus Poetry 7th Europa? I mean, it just makes you want to know more, right? Like, what kind of Europe are we going to get from this?
Yeah, definitely. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. Excerpts from this collection by Manuel del Valle Colón, published in 2016.
2016. Wow. Okay.
But to really appreciate these poems, I think we need to understand a little bit about the man who wrote them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, where is he coming from?
Exactly. So Manuel del Valle was born in New York City in 1948,
Okay.
but his family was from Puerto Rico, and he grew up in East Harlem in the housing projects.
So very different from the Europe he'll be writing about later.
Right. And then he goes on this incredible academic journey, Brooklyn Technical High School, then the Yale Transitional Year Program, Wesleyan University, and finally Princeton University.
Wow. That's like a who's who of top schools.
Exactly. It shows you he was a really bright guy, but also he was very aware of social issues, even from a young age.
Okay. How so?
Well, he was involved with Aspera. Yeah, it's an organization that helps Puerto Rican and Latino students.
Oh, okay.
And he worked with some really important figures in the community like Antonia Pantoja and Fernando Ferrer.
Okay. So he's got this strong connection to his heritage.
Definitely. And he even spent a year studying in Madrid, focusing on Puerto Rican history and politics at the University of Puerto Rico.
Wow, so he's really digging deep into his roots.
Yeah. And then back at Princeton, he founded the Latino organization there and wrote his senior thesis on Puerto Rican students and public education.
That sounds pretty relevant to his work with Aspira.
It was actually his thesis was later used in the Aspera v. Board of Education case.
Wow. So his academic work actually had real-world impact.
It did. And then he went on to Yale Law School. And, after graduating, he worked with the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund.
Oh, wow. So he's like a legal eagle fighting for social justice.
Exactly. He worked on some landmark bilingual education cases.
So it's pretty clear that education and social equality were like big themes in his life.
Yeah, definitely.
But okay, so how do we get from this legal scholar to a poet exploring Europe?
Well, the poems we're looking at today were written during a very specific time in his life, 1983 and 1984, while he was studying at the London School of Economics.
Okay, so he's back in the academic world, but this time in London.
Exactly. And he wasn't just stuck in the library. He was traveling all over the UK and Europe.
So he's got this really interesting perspective, right? Like this New Yorker with Puerto Rican roots who's deeply involved in social justice issues in the U.S., now experiencing Europe in the middle of the Cold War.
Exactly. It's a unique lens to view Europe through.
Okay, so let's jump into his poems and see what he saw, starting with London in September 1983.
Sounds good.
His poem from September 2nd starts with this kind of contrast, bluish skies dotted with elongated clouds. So you're picturing this beautiful London sky. But then he talks about being in a chimneyed city of traditions that's also experiencing third world pressures. And then he mentions these strained meanderings that do not amount to the slightest direction. It's like he's feeling lost or out of place.
Yeah, I think that tension between the picture postcard image of London and the underlying social and economic issues is really important. He's not just seeing the tourist sites.
Right. And he also says something about a tolerated polyglot that is not so. What do you think he means by that?
Well, London is obviously a very multicultural city, but he seems to be suggesting that the acceptance of different cultures is maybe superficial.
Like it's not truly integrated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe there's this tolerance, but not true equality or understanding.
That makes sense, especially when you think about the political climate in Britain at the time.
Right. Thatcherism was in full swing. There was a lot of social unrest. It wasn't all, tea and crumpets.
Definitely. And on the very same day, he writes another poem, this time about Bonus, which is on Lake Windermere. It starts with this beautiful image of the lake awaiting the first vessel, and you have these students in kayaks.
Oh, yeah. I can picture that. So peaceful.
Yeah, but then he describes Bonus as hugging the lakeside, trapping sightseekers.
Trapping sightseekers. That's an interesting choice of words.
Right, like it's not exactly a flattering description.
Yeah, it sounds almost predatory.
Yeah, and then he talks about the books being sold there and says they have a quiescent sense that they are of little import.
So it's not just about the tourists. Even the books themselves seem kind of lifeless.
Right, and then he broadens his view and talks about Britain as a whole with caverns and castles where people in public houses seek to forget with ale and brew. It's like he's seeing this culture of escapism.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like he's in these beautiful places, but he's noticing this underlying current of maybe disillusionment or a need to escape from reality.
Okay, moving on to September 3rd. He's back in London on Oxford Street, and it's like he's dropped into a completely different world.
What's he seeing now?
He describes these punk hairstyles enshrined on the heads of blue-eyed Anglo-Saxons.
Enshrined. That's a weird way to describe a punk hairstyle.
Right, it's like he's saying that even this rebellious style has become commodified or something.
Yeah, like it's lost its edge.
And then he talks about how employment and clothing seem to be the sole measure of success in this world.
That's a pretty harsh critique of materialism.
Yeah, and he calls London this isle of fading treasures under gray skies.
So not exactly a glowing review.
But then he also mentions seeing Caribbean faces that twang heavy with British accents.
Ah, so he's noticing the diversity of London, too.
Yeah, and he contrasts these artificial divisions and stratified dreams with the natural world where there's no such hierarchy.
It's like he's saying that nature doesn't care about social class or race.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to get a sense of his style.
Yeah.
Very observational, lots of little details, and then these bigger reflections on society.
Right, and he doesn't shy away from making some pretty pointed critiques.
Yeah, he's definitely not afraid to share his opinions.
Okay, there's another poem from September 2nd that I want to talk about. It starts with these strained conversations on a listless gray day. And he says, like, you can feel these national strains of times that are long gone.
So like a sense of lingering tension or unresolved history.
Right, and then he mentions seeing motorcycles making left turns.
Left turns.
Yeah, it's like this little detail that grounds us in London, because they drive on the left side of the road.
Oh, right.
And then he describes this bureaucrat with a face without a smile, issuing green identity books that hide much more than they reveal about the humanity that resides here.
So he's seeing this impersonal bureaucracy that kind of dehumanizes people.
But then the poem ends with this sense of hope. He talks about these stormier lights that will build new ways of distilling the dreams of freedom. It's like he's anticipating change, even if it might be difficult.
It's interesting. You're right. Like he's critical of what he sees, but he still has this optimism about the future.
Now, on September 4th, he's at Camden Gates under these grayish, damp skies, and he says that the gates, quote, strangely appear to set free the narrowed minds of yesteryear's frolic. What do you think he means by that?
Well, Camden, even back then, had this reputation for being a bit more alternative and open-minded.
Yeah.
So maybe he's saying that even in this supposedly more free-thinking area, there's still this residue of old-fashioned thinking.
Like people are clinging to the past.
Maybe. Or maybe he's just being a bit playful with the language,
He also talks about these warm lunches only made tasty by gravy.
That's so specific. It's fun.
I know, right? It's like this random detail that just sticks with you.
Oh.
Then he mentions African discussions and restrictions of entry, which he sees as signs of bureaucratic entrenchment and fear.
So even in Camden, there are these barriers and divisions.
But again, he ends on a hopeful note. He sees these melodic sounds of foreign languages as a sign of potential integration.
It's like he keeps coming back to this idea that diversity and multiculturalism are ultimately positive forces.
Okay, later that same day, he writes this poem that's a bit more personal. He's longing for Brooklyn Bridge from London town and wondering if it's becoming an estranged recollection.
So he's thinking about home and maybe feeling a bit homesick.
Maybe, and he's reflecting on this world of possibilities at hand and the responsibility of freedom.
Like he's feeling the weight of all the choices he has.
Yeah, and then the poem ends with this idea of studying long and writing the tales that are on the faces of persons yet unborn. It's like a mission statement for his writing.
It's beautiful, and it also shows that he's thinking about the future and the stories that haven't been told yet.
On September 9th, he has this interesting image of feeling churched into a world cut off from advertising.
Churched into. I wonder what he means by that.
I'm not sure, but he seems to be suggesting that he's being exposed to a very specific worldview or something.
Maybe like a kind of cultural bubble?
And then he talks about the kiosk being the only treasure open to the trade-wind commercial pirates and mentions monopoly and colonial proportion profits.
So he's seeing the economic forces at play even in this seemingly mundane setting.
Yeah, and then he makes this really sharp observation about how racial stratifications are like poor cousins to a linguistic rigidification of Shakespearean plenitude, and the empty cinemas of non-British movies symbolize the passing of glory. It's a lot to unpack, but it seems like he's critiquing the cultural dominance of Britain.
Definitely he's connecting language, culture, and economics in a really interesting way.
Okay, fast forward to September 15th. He's in Fleet, And he describes these clouds fly by under blue skies. So again, you have this beautiful image, but then he says he feels himself joining others to form these gray spheres of imminent weather change.
So it's like a shift from individual experience to a collective sense of unease or anticipation?
Right. And then he sees these tourists parade their desires to relocate to better climes. And there's this feeling that everyone is trying to move beyond the limits of time's constraints onto the basic rhythm of life itself. It's like he's yearning for something more authentic.
Yeah, like he's looking for something deeper than the superficial tourist experience.
Okay, so now we're moving into his observations of the UK countryside, and there's a definite shift in tone.
In what way?
Well, on September 16th, he writes about these camp travelers and their tremulous candor as they gather for a meal.
Tremulous candor. That's interesting.
It's like he's seeing this genuine human connection in this simple act of sharing a meal.
Yeah. And he goes on to describe the landscape in such detail: rolling hills that glisten in green pasture, with cows that lie still receiving the soft wetness of a Thursday rain.
It's so vivid, you can practically smell the rain and the grass.
And then he talks about these future pubs that hide rather than reveal true feeling.
Yeah.
But he also sees youth's bright cheers replacing mock seriousness. It's like he's finding hope in the younger generation.
Yeah, and the poem ends with this reflection on freedom's child and love born of humankind, finding realization amidst sovereign dignity. It's a pretty optimistic ending.
It is. It's like he's saying that even within established social structures, there's still room for love and freedom to flourish.
But then the very next day, September 17th, he's got this slightly more critical view of the countryside experience.
What happened?
Well, he talks about eccentric tidings in windswept camp cities and a loss of mild adventure.
So maybe the novelty is wearing off a bit.
Maybe. And then he makes this interesting comparison. He says that the stories of Duncan and Macbeth are replaced by a courier guide to the half-truths of well-rehearsed travelogues.
So it's like he's saying that the real stories are being replaced by these sanitized tourist versions.
Exactly. And then he mentions these motor vehicle accidents on narrow curved English roads in Devon and an incomplete grimace. It's like he's saying that people are turning a blind eye to the darker side of things.
Yeah, and he critiques this false dignity that forgets the deep-seated problems of national homelands and seeks failed illusions of perfunctory games.
It's like he's saying that people are distracting themselves with superficial pleasures instead of facing the real issues.
That's a pretty harsh assessment. I can see where he's coming from.
Then, in Stratford-upon-Avon on September 18th, his observations are much more focused and almost photographic. He describes these ducks dividing bread in the River Avon, the quiet of a sunlit Sunday, broken by a bird's call kayaks in a barrier-allocated area, and bank fishermen with empty nets.
Wow, it's like this series of snapshots.
And then he zooms in on these two livers, deaf to the passing sounds and cries, lost in their own world.
It's a nice contrast, right? Like you have all this activity around them, but they're completely focused on each other.
Yeah, but the poem also hints at these underlying structures and limitations with the barrier-allocated area and empty nets. It's like, even in this idyllic setting, there are these constraints.
Okay, so he's still finding those little details that reveal something deeper about society.
By September 22nd, his focus shifts again, and he's writing about the world of allocated spaces and diminished hopes that goes beyond just the scenery.
Okay, so he's moving from specific observations to more general reflections.
Exactly, and he sees punk styles not as a rebellion leading to freedom's choice, but as something contained within the predictability of motorways and Ford cars.
So again, it's this idea of rebellion being co-opted or neutralized.
Yeah, and he laments the lack of peace of mind that would bind the dreams of many into the programs of today. And then he says that Britain is a fantasy built on forests that no longer exist and lakes that long since have evaporated.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
It's like he's saying that the foundation of this society is crumbling.
Okay, so he's definitely getting more critical as his time in the UK goes on.
Right, but then he has this experience that kind of shakes things up.
What happened?
Well, he's in Fort William, Scotland on September 24th, and he witnesses a car accident.
Oh, wow.
He describes this middle-aged Scottish woman whose car is totally destroyed, a bleeding driver calming his wife, a crying baby, and a newlywed couple who are also involved.
It's a pretty chaotic scene.
Yeah, and he talks about these damaged blue cars and how the initial shock gives way to this profound feeling of being life hurt but unscathed in the lower depths of the Scottish Highlands in September. It's like in the face of this accident, all the petty concerns and anxieties just disappear.
Yeah, it puts things in perspective, right? Like
Right.
suddenly it's not about social divisions or cultural critiques. It's about basic human survival.
Okay, then we're back in New York on September 28th, and we get two completely different poems. The first one is this incredibly romantic and intimate portrayal of love.
Okay, let's hear it.
He uses these beautiful metaphors like dawn's gift to the brilliance of love, and he describes her breathing as an angel and her hair covering his chest as sheer joy.
Wow, it's very passionate.
Yeah, and he talks about creating their own sense of time and this deep belief that she would never leave. It's like he's completely caught up in this moment of love.
It's a beautiful expression of pure emotion.
But then the second poem from the same day is completely different. He starts by saying, "Strangeness is a tradesman's name amidst the cloudy skies over tents that seem to flame up at night."
Okay, that's a much darker image.
And then he goes on to criticize these sagacious soldier leaders and the call of young women who mistake love for an ennobling illusion.
So it's like he's rejecting both militarism and romantic love.
And then he has this powerful image of a tall standing tree saying more than all the books in London's British Museum. It's like he's finding wisdom in nature.
Yeah, and the poem ends with this call to reclaim the world once again for humanity and forget all the petty stuff.
It's a pretty stark contrast to the previous poem.
Definitely, it's like he's swinging between these extremes of intense emotion and then this almost cynical detachment.
Okay, back in London in October 1983, his observations continue. On October 23rd, he writes about these dangerous colored puppets and political machinations being the divine of children who play amidst the tropical rubble of stratified dreams.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
I know, right? It's a very dense poem, but it seems like he's talking about the illusions of power and progress.
Yeah, and he contrasts those illusions with the troubled thoughts of single youths who dream of freedom on a motorbike.
And then he ends with this critique of middle-class priorities that worships the hair, but not the body of the substantive call for peace.
So he's saying that people are focused on superficial things instead of real issues?
Exactly.
It's interesting how he keeps coming back to these themes of social class and inequality.
Right. It's clearly something that he's very attuned to.
Okay, so what happens next?
Well, on October 27th, the imagery gets even more intense. He describes this tropical azure sky raining paratroopers with green faces and fatigues.
Wow, that's a disturbing image.
It's like an invasion or a nightmare. And then he uses this metaphor of an octopus who eats airfields and small island children and talks about the desperate grasping for death to fend off the foreign element.
It sounds like he's reacting to some kind of conflict or oppression.
Yeah, and then the poem shifts to this jungle reign of isolated mountains where tomorrow's freedom is hidden in the gorilla's gasp. It's a very visceral and almost violent poem.
It's definitely not a romanticized view of revolution.
Then on November 29th, we get a moment of quiet observation with a poem about a lonely girl with puka necklace and beret.
Oh, that's a nice change of pace.
The whole poem is just a series of questions directed at this girl, like, does your soul thirst for a redemptive drink? It's very empathetic and almost heartbreaking.
It's like he's seeing the loneliness and longing in this one person, and it represents something bigger about the human condition.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So is he going to keep getting more and more bleak, or is there any light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, December 4th brings a poem that's full of personification and abstract ideas. He talks about despair's sister, who frowns occasionally about the transitory state of frost-laden shears, and then surprise is a smirk of a redhead and tales of tartan-wearing patriots.
Okay, so it's a bit more playful.
Yeah, and he also mentions Gibraltar's monkeys and freedom as a grasp of a drum beat and a piano master in silent repose.
It's a really interesting mix of images.
And then the poem ends with this question posed by asymmetric tunes. Are we bound by limits or do we create them ourselves?
That's a good question to ponder.
It is. And then the very next day, December 5th, he writes this poem that's structured as a series of questions, but this time they're very personal and grounded in a specific moment.
What's the moment?
He's waiting for the tube at Russell Square and then traveling to Soho on a rainy night, and he's wondering what they'll see and do and become. So he's with someone.
Yeah, and he's reflecting on their relationship. It's a very intimate glimpse into their shared experience.
Okay, so it's like he can go from these grand philosophical reflections to these tiny personal moments.
Exactly.
So what about 1984? Does he keep traveling and writing?
He does. On January 7th, he writes about dreams awakening, the temple of inner feelings, and the singularity of misdirected efforts.
So he's still thinking about purpose and meaning. Yeah, and then he contrasts a child on wings with a steel-helmeted charade under colored lights of foreign cocoons. It's like he's seeing the world through the eyes of innocence and then the jaded eyes of experience.
And he also mentions ever-present tropical flies. Do you think that's a recurring motif for him?
Maybe it could be a symbol of his connection to his Puerto Rican heritage or just this nagging sense of something being out of place.
Interesting. And then he says he finds solace in patterned solitude in shades of gray in a world bewildered by the honesty of a child's eyes.
It's like he's seeking peace and authenticity in a world that feels fake.
Okay, so are we going to get any more love poems?
Well, kind of. On February 11th, he has this poem where he uses this metaphor of swaying on a swan's walk or being made marble by the look of an askewed stagehand.
Okay, that's pretty abstract.
Yeah, and he talks about skyward emotions being discharged into caged hopes and the tide falling on Caribbean coasts. It's like he's feeling trapped or limited.
Yeah, and then he says that the joy of a confused glimpse into the possibility of tomorrow is replaced by movements of limited consequence. So it's not a very optimistic poem.
But then later that same day, he writes this other poem that's filled with much softer imagery, like soft lace, graceful lace, a twinkling gown, and a rainbow conscience.
Okay, that's a big change.
Yeah, and he talks about string quartets offering soothing messages and a journey in the forest of adventure leading to a clearing of the way.
So it's like a moment of peace and clarity.
But then it ends with this reflection. We are each no more than broken glass, edged in conscious flowing layers of the things that we will never be.
Wow. That's a beautiful but also kind of sad image.
It is. It's like he's acknowledging the fragility of life and the things we can't control.
Okay, so what's next?
On February 16th, he's talking about lacquer being the shade of ghosts, and he mentions oblique Edinburgh tongues.
Edinburgh. So he's in Scotland again.
Yeah, and he says there's this thin line of a cultured speech pushing dream-skewed vision into the hearth.
It's like he's struggling to express himself or maybe feeling like an outsider.
Yeah, and then he mentions Vladimir's clownish acts and the Glasgow emptiness and how Rent forces him to move away from northern possibility into a one-line chagrin that is lyrical.
It sounds like he's feeling displaced and disappointed.
Yeah, but there's also this sense of humor about it, like he's trying to find the poetry in his own struggles.
Oh, so I can see that.
Then on February 17th, he has this poem about a rendezvous born of lustful inquietudes that disrupts the midnight air of a London frost.
Okay, so back to London and back to romance.
Sort of. He describes the lace markings of curtains and the superficiality of faint exasperation and classical violins playing out the fascination of complex syndromes.
It sounds a pretty intense encounter.
Yeah, and then he contrasts concrete sidewalks with direct roads of taverns and ends with this declaration: freedom is home at the heart of your love in the midst of winter on a frosty night.
Wow, so it's like he's finding freedom and connection in this moment of passion.
But is it lasting?
That's the question, right?
Okay, on February 18th, he's back to more rural imagery with colorful dresses of farm lads and lassies, thunderstorms pelting fields, and moonlight casting shadows in forests.
It's like a breath of fresh air after all that city stuff.
Yeah, and the poem ends with this shared last dream upon this coastal shore of tropics beneath the halo of her veil. It's a beautiful image.
It is. It's like he's blending the European landscape with this almost dreamlike tropical vision.
Okay, then, on February 24th, he uses this really strange metaphor: rumble fish prey on the garbage soul of streetwise motorcycles.
Okay, that's a new one.
And he mentions the ocean's shore as a river's outlet and says that guilt rides high upon the colorblind insanity of erstwhile brothers, and there are Greek expressions misplaced in billiard halls.
It's a very fragmented and abstract poem.
Yeah, and he talks about a flowing dream that disguises the fraud which oppresses a brother's image, and the confusion of movement's temporal hiatus with small-town ways in a Midwestern desert of slighted accents. It's a lot to unpack.
It sounds like he's trying to make sense of all these different experiences and observations, but he's not quite sure how they all fit together.
Right, and then in March 1984, he's in Moscow.
Moscow, wow, that's a big jump.
And he writes this poem about how Russian eyes stare listlessly into a stranger's eyes, and he's pondering humanity and seeing their tense-directed eyesight as a guise.
So he's trying to read people, but he's not sure what he's seeing.
Yeah, and then he describes the cold atmosphere, the hygienic scene, and these ice-cold eyes leading to a sea of rabbit fur hats as a defining image of Moscow.
It's a very vivid description.
And he notices English spoken by the young-faced black marketeers, and the eager eyes looking at his wardrobe and the freezing streets with Russians unfazed by the chill.
It's like he's taking in all these details about daily life in Moscow.
Yeah, and he also talks about the strange inefficiency in his hotel room
Mhm.
and the tall mammoth structures and the red star as symbols of difference.
So he's seeing both the mundane and the symbolic aspects of this place.
Right, and then he describes the wide streets, sometimes deserted, sometimes filled with people, and this energy that suggests life continuing beyond the last metro.
It's a really interesting snapshot of Moscow during the Cold War.
Okay, so then in April 1984, we get these glimpses from the Agency, the Adriatic Sea, and the Rhine River. On April 13th, he's on the Agency surrounded by volcanic mountains with albatross ride the soft wind, and the Azure Agency reminds him of tinted sunglasses of a dream translated into a smile.
It's like he's back in that dreamlike state.
Yeah, and he mentions the long blonde hair of an Aussie artist and painted t-shirts as a sign of frustrated fascination with time.
Okay, so he's still thinking about time, even in this idyllic setting.
Yeah, and then he has this whimsical idea of a second being blue dye and a minute being red dye, and the overall feeling is of a very lazy Friday cruise away from home. It's a very relaxed and carefree poem.
It sounds like he's enjoying himself.
But then on April 17th, he's on the Adriatic Sea and he's feeling lonely. He compares loneliness to an old wine and a bird in fancy flight, and he sees space as the vessel for aloneness.
So he's embracing the solitude in a way.
Yeah, and he says that isolation is the expression of a moment holding together unfulfilled visions.
That's deep.
And then he talks about the strength and wisdom in waiting for the uncoupling of truth and half-truth within the safety of a ship traveling over the Adriatic Sea. It's like he's seeking clarity and understanding.
Okay, so he's gone from carefree to contemplative.
Exactly.
What about the Rhine River?
Well, on April 28th, he describes the Rhine flowing beyond an unsolved riddle of a blonde shade. And then he mentions chirping birds, green fir trees, blooming flowers, two tall trees touching leaves, and a barge passing by as a young man cycles.
It's a very peaceful scene.
It is. It's a sun-filled day of leisure. And he says that time seems to slow down, and worry becomes a distant memory.
So it was like a moment of pure tranquility.
Exactly.
Okay, we're getting close to the end of his journey. What's left?
Well, back in London on May 19th, 1984, he writes this fantastical poem about a magic kingdom of the flying horses and the walking bushes with wizards and good fairies.
Oh, well, where did that come from?
I know, right? It's a complete departure from his usual style. But he talks about the crippled being healed and human eyes being beguiled and seeing things not as they are, but as chance allows.
It's like he's escaping into a world of pure imagination.
Yeah, and then he says that the dissipating magic leaves behind a residue of happiness and one splendid moment of wise peace.
It's a beautiful thought.
It is. And then finally we have two poems from June 1984 in Stockholm. The first one is this really strange and symbolic poem about a beauteous slave of Russian goddesses parade in blue silk faces for flattering queens amidst sublime magic.
Okay, that's a lot to take in.
He also mentions the red silk of sheiks and a ballet nymph that jumps like a feather for a slave's true smile.
It's like a dreamlike theatrical performance.
Yeah, and he talks about the slave and the nymph intertwining and time coming to a standstill, and the key to life being its celebration in unborn dreams. Is a very enigmatic poem.
Definitely open to interpretation.
Okay, and then the final two poems in this collection are both from June 30th, also in Stockholm. The first one is about blonde smugness, Swedish temperaments, and a threesome.
Okay, so back to reality.
Yeah, and he specifically focuses on this one woman and her assertive presence. And the poem ends with a reflection on the weariness found in a world of perfect clothes shops and the lack of joy for those who have lost humility.
So it's like a critique of materialism and superficiality.
Exactly. And then the second poem is about a waitress with a false gestured smirk and smooth-talking English that can't hide her inner turmoil.
So it's like he's seeing through the facade.
Yeah, and he describes her as an embodiment of a blue scarf misplaced, and her ankle parading, and her misplaced hair and pinstripe jeans like she's a prisoner.
That's a powerful image.
And he says that this is a time of quiescence for the blue-eyed Vikings of connected waterways.
So he's ending his journey with these observations of people who are trapped or unhappy despite living in a seemingly prosperous society.
Yeah, it's a pretty sobering ending.
It is. But you know what I find most compelling about this whole collection is how it shows the power of poetry to capture not just events, but the emotions and the thoughts and the little details that make up a life.
I agree. And as we've gone through these poems, I keep thinking about how Manuel del Valle's background and his experiences really shaped his view of Europe. It's not just a tourist perspective, it's so much deeper than that.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so fascinating. I mean, think about your own travels and how your background influences the way you see the world.
It's true. We all have these lenses that we see through.
And this collection really makes you think about how those lenses shape our understanding of different cultures and societies.
Yeah, and how poetry can be this amazing tool.